Have you ever imagined that a seemingly ordinary event could change your life forever? Lauren was just about to drive home after a long day when she never expected that one unjust night would thrust her into the center of a storm of justice. Officer Ethan pulled her over, and what happened next would unveil a shocking truth: a conspiracy, an abuse of power, and a fight to reclaim honor. Lauren wasn't alone. She had her brother James, a district attorney willing to do whatever it takes to defend justice. Follow this tense story and let us know what you think in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss the next shocking twist. A fateful night, Lauren was driving down an empty highway, the soft strains of music blending with the slow beat of her heart after a long day. She felt a rare sense of peace as she thought about the children she had taught that day, their eager eyes listening to tales of great leaders and the innocent smiles of a hopeful future. But that peace was fleeting. The flashing red and blue lights in her rearview mirror made her heart sink. She didn't think she had done anything wrong, yet reflexively she slowed down, checked her speedometer, and gradually pulled over to the shoulder. Taking a deep breath to steady herself, Lauren watched as a police officer approached. "Good evening, officer. Is there a problem?" she asked calmly, her hands neatly placed on the steering wheel. The officer, Ethan Keller, stared at her silently at first. Instead of speaking, he shone his flashlight directly into her eyes, as if searching for something. "License and registration," he said in a cold tone that lacked the professionalism she expected. Lauren handed over her documents with steady hands, though a creeping sense of unease began to settle inside her. Something didn't feel right. Why wasn't he explaining why he had stopped her? Ethan Keller slowly rifled through her papers as if stalling. Behind him, his partner, Daniel, watched silently, his eyes scrutinizing every detail. "Anything in your trunk?" Daniel asked, his tone accusatory. Lauren blinked in surprise. "Just some books, a few groceries, and a couple of random items." "Step out of the car immediately." The tension in the air became almost suffocating. Lauren could feel every nerve in her body tighten as her hand reached for the seatbelt. "What did I do wrong?" she asked, keeping her voice calm, even though she noticed a faint sneer briefly cross Keller's lips. "Just a routine check." Lauren stepped out of the car, her eyes never leaving the two officers. She stood straight, her arms hanging loosely at her sides, trying hard not to let her worry show. Daniel opened the trunk and began rifling through its contents without any regard for tidiness. Books, educational flyers, a few bags of groceries tumbled onto the ground. Then something appeared, a small bag containing white powder, leaving Lauren utterly speechless. She didn't even need to look closely to know what was happening. She was being set up. Her heart pounded furiously in her chest as Keller held up the bag of powder, his eyes as cold as if he'd just uncovered undeniable evidence. "Illegal possession. It looks like you're in big trouble." Lauren shook her head, every fiber of her being screaming in protest. "No, I've never even seen that before in my life. You're making a mistake." But no one cared about the truth. Cold handcuffs clamped around her wrists. She swallowed back her anguish as she realized she was being dragged into a nightmare with no escape. Yet, she still held on to hope. Looking down at the dark road, a glimmer of light sparked within her. There was someone who wouldn't let her sink into darkness. James, her brother, the one she knew would do anything to save her. Hope in the darkness. Lauren sat in a cramped cell, the faint fluorescent light casting a weak glow on the cold concrete wall. Her wrists still throbbed from the tight iron handcuffs, but that wasn't what took her breath away. What truly constricted her chest was the stark injustice she now faced. She had always believed in fairness, in the legal system. But now she wasn't so sure. One thing was clear. If she didn't act, her life would be ruined for a crime she didn't commit. The iron door creaked open, and an officer stepped in. Daniel. He folded his arms and looked down at her with a glint of amusement. "Well, Teacher Lauren, do you still think you're a good person?" Lauren lifted her head, her eyes blazing with anger. "Why are you doing this? I haven't done anything wrong." Daniel shrugged. "Sometimes we need a scapegoat, and well, you seem just right." Lauren clenched her fists, knowing she couldn't let her anger take control. She needed to stay alert. She needed to find a way out of this nightmare. "At least I have the right to make a phone call," she said, her voice steady now, no trace of fear. Daniel sneered. "Sure, by the book, but you might have to wait a long while." A wave of despair surged within her, yet she refused to let it drown her. Taking a deep breath, she met his eyes head-on. "I want to make a call." Daniel shrugged and signaled to another officer. Moments later, she was led to a wall-mounted phone, her wrists still bound by the cuffs. Her trembling fingers dialed a number. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. "Lauren?" A familiar warm voice echoed, and in that instant, Lauren felt as if a massive weight had been lifted from her chest. "James?" She inhaled deeply, fighting to keep her composure. "I need you, right now." There was a brief silence, but she knew her brother well, and she knew he was already thinking on his feet. "Where are you?" His voice came through sharp and determined, with no trace of panic. "At Millstone Police Station. They set me up. They found drugs in my car, but I swear—" "I know," James interrupted, his tone simmering with anger. "I'll handle this. Don't say a word to them. Understand? Don't say anything." Lauren nodded, tears welling up as she fought to hold them back. "Yes, I'm coming over right now." The call ended, and for the first time in a long while, Lauren didn't feel completely alone, because she knew that the real battle was only just beginning. Lauren sat in the cramped cell, her hands tightly clasped, as she tried to steady the tremors coursing through her body. She had heard too many stories about innocent people being wrongfully arrested, but she had never imagined that she would become one of them. All because of unfounded prejudice. A trap had been laid, and she had fallen into it with no way to escape. Outside, the atmosphere at Millstone Police Station was suspiciously silent. No one came to question her, nor did anyone explain why she was still being held. Everything was steeped in a heavy, oppressive weight. But she knew this was no ordinary weight. It was psychological torment. Suddenly, footsteps echoed in the corridor. Lauren lifted her head, her heart pounding. The cell door swung open, and Daniel appeared, followed by Mark. They exchanged a glance, and then Daniel stepped forward. "Miss Carter, have you had some time to reflect on your wrongdoing last night?" Daniel asked, his tone laced with mockery. Lauren stared him down, unblinking. "I have nothing to reflect on. I did nothing wrong." Mark let out a quiet laugh, but it was no ordinary laugh. It was the laugh of someone who knew he was in control of the situation. "Too bad, because the evidence says otherwise." Lauren tightened her grip on her hands. "Your evidence is fake." Daniel tilted his head, a spark of amusement flickering in his eyes. "Oh? And who do you think will believe you? An unknown teacher? Or us, the enforcers of the law?" A wave of helplessness surged over Lauren, but she immediately brushed it aside. She couldn't afford to break down. "You'll regret this," she warned. Daniel laughed, his laughter echoing in the small room. "Regret? You're quite amusing, Lauren, but I'm afraid you'll have to get used to staying here a little longer." The door slammed shut behind them, leaving Lauren in darkness and silence. But she was not alone. She had one hope, James. Across the city, James Carter hurried down the hallway of a federal building, his phone pressed tightly to his ear. The voice on the other end was urgent. "She's been set up, James. I have a witness." James stopped in his tracks, his grip on his phone tightening. "Where's the evidence?" "A video shot on a cell phone. It shows Mark stuffing a bag of white powder into Lauren's purse." James's heart pounded fiercely. "Can you send it to me right away?" "I will, but you must protect the witness. She's terrified." James took a deep breath. This wasn't just an ordinary case of wrongful arrest. This was a conspiracy, and if he didn't act now, Lauren might never regain her freedom. He hung up and turned swiftly toward the exit. A storm was coming, and he was determined to be the spark that ignited it. Lauren sat on the hard chair in the interrogation room, her eyes fixed on the two-way mirror opposite her. Behind that glass, she knew Daniel and Mark were watching, waiting for the moment she would break. They wanted to see her terrified, to hear her beg, but Lauren refused to give them that satisfaction. She took a deep breath and straightened her back, even though inside her heart felt as if it were being squeezed. The cell door swung open, and Daniel entered, a folder in hand. He sat down across from Lauren, a fake smile curling his lips. "Ms. Carter," he began slowly, "we've reviewed your case, and unfortunately, everything is stacked against you." Lauren folded her arms, striving to remain calm. "You all know very well that I did nothing wrong, but that doesn't matter, does it? You just want an excuse to justify your actions." Mark stood in the corner, arms crossed over his chest, his eyes cold. "You can deny it all you want, but justice isn't in your hands, Lauren. It's in ours." Lauren bit her lip to contain her anger. Justice, a word that now rang bitterly in this situation. They had taken her freedom, and now they wanted to strip her of all hope. But they didn't know that beyond these walls, a storm was brewing. Elsewhere, James Carter stood by his desk, eyes glued to his computer screen. Before him played a cell phone video from an anonymous witness, a piece of evidence that could not be disputed. In the footage, it was clear that Mark had stuffed a bag of drugs into Lauren's purse. James clenched his fists, every nerve in his body taut as a string. This was no longer just a case of wrongful arrest. It was a deliberate crime, an organized conspiracy. Without hesitation, he grabbed his phone and called one of his subordinates. "I need an emergency order. We have to act immediately." On the other end, a federal agent's voice came through urgently. "We'll investigate, but are you sure?" One wrong move could ruin Lauren's reputation. "And yours." James stared at the screen, where the image of Lauren being unjustly detained made his heart tighten. "I've never been more certain of anything in my life." In her cell, Lauren sat silently, her mind swirling with hundreds of thoughts. She remembered the children at the community center, the eager faces as she taught them about justice and fighting for what was right. Now, she found herself locked away in the very system she had once trusted. Suddenly, the sound of an iron door opening broke the silence. A female officer stepped in and looked at Lauren with an unusual expression. No mockery, no hostility. "They're taking you out of here," the officer said softly. Lauren held her breath. "What?" The officer leaned down and unlocked Lauren's handcuffs. "Attorney General Carter has personally come. He has evidence proving you're innocent." Lauren's heart pounded in her chest. She stood up, her legs trembling from the surge of pent-up emotions. As she walked out into the corridor, she saw James standing there, his eyes a mixture of anger and relief. He stepped forward, took her hand, and squeezed it tightly. "You're safe now, Lauren," he said in a hoarse, emotional voice. Lauren looked at him, her eyes welling with tears. She wasn't one to cry easily, but in that moment, The connection, the empathy, the release, it was too overwhelming to hold back. "I knew you'd come," she whispered. James squeezed her hand even tighter. "I will never let them destroy you." She took a deep breath, feeling the taste of freedom fill her lungs. But deep down, she knew the battle was far from over. They might have saved her today, but countless others out there were still being wrongfully detained. Clutching James's hand, determination shone in her eyes. "We have to expose everything." James nodded, the same fire blazing in his gaze. "And we will, together." Lauren's palms were slick with sweat as she stared at the dim lights in the law office's conference room. In front of her sat Monica, a young woman wearing a hoodie pulled low over her forehead, as if trying to hide her identity. Next to Monica, Patricia Norwood, the only journalist brave enough to dig deep into this case, sat with her hands clenching her pen tightly. "That video could change everything," Monica said, her voice soft but firm. Lauren took a deep breath, trying to steady the rapid beating of her heart. She knew this moment could be a turning point, or a warning. If Monica really had the footage, it would mean the truth would be exposed. But at the same time, both she and Monica were putting themselves in danger. Patricia nodded reassuringly. She captured the moment when Mark stuffed something into your purse. "I've reviewed it. It's clear evidence." Lauren could hardly breathe. Anger, relief, fear, all mingled into a storm of emotions. Monica pulled out her phone, her fingers trembling as she opened her video library. "I've kept it all this time, but I'm scared. I don't know if coming forward will make me a target for retaliation." Lauren looked into the young woman's bewildered eyes. She understood all too well the terror of being forced into the role of a liar simply for daring to speak the truth. "We'll protect you," James said in a steady voice as he entered the room. He placed a reassuring hand on Lauren's shoulder. "We have the FBI on our side, people who will make sure you're safe." Monica studied James for a long moment before nodding. "All right, I'll do it." She connected her phone to Patricia's laptop. The screen flickered, and the video began to play. In the blurry glow of the streetlights, it was unmistakable. Mark was standing next to Lauren's car. He glanced around as if to make sure no one was watching, then casually stuffed a small plastic bag into her purse. Lauren clenched her fists, her nails digging deep into her palms. "Oh my God," James whispered. Patricia immediately copied the video onto a hard drive. "We need to take this public." "Not yet," James interjected. "We need to get it to the court first. If we release it now, they'll find a way to discredit the witness or make the evidence disappear." Lauren nodded. "We'll do this the right way, but that also means, Monica, you need to be prepared." Monica gripped her hands tightly and nodded with determination. "I've been afraid for far too long. Now it's time to do what's right." 3 days later, in a packed courtroom, Lauren sat beside James, her heart racing as the large screen lit up. Monica's video appeared, each frame clearly exposing Mark's actions. A deadly silence fell over the room. Mark sat at the defendant's table, his face ashen. He turned to his lawyer and whispered something, but no one could deny the evidence. James squeezed Lauren's hand. "We did it." Lauren swallowed hard, emotion surging within her. She had endured so much, but at last, justice was on her side. Mark would be convicted. The truth would not be hidden. She turned to Monica, who was fighting back tears. They had fought together, and they had won. Lauren sat in the cold, cramped cell, the dim fluorescent light casting weak shadows on the gray concrete walls. She felt the weight of every labored breath, yet her mind remained alert as thoughts raced through her head. She couldn't believe that just a few hours ago she was free, breathing in fresh air outside, and now her wrists bore deep red marks from the number 8 handcuffs. Those officers, Daniel and Mark, had given her no chance to defend herself. They were determined to ruin her, regardless of the truth. She recalled the desperate phone call, her one remaining hope. James, her brother, who possessed enough power to turn the situation around. But Lauren worried not only about whether her brother could rescue her, but also about the consequences she would face once the truth came out. She wasn't the only one caught in this web. Countless innocent people had been buried under baseless accusations, with no strength or opportunity to fight back. Outside, the sky gradually darkened, and time seemed to crawl in the weariness of waiting. Suddenly, the sound of shoes striking the concrete floor echoed down the hall. A cold, exasperated voice commanded, "Come out! Someone's here to see you!" Lauren's heart pounded as she slowly rose to her feet. When the cell door swung open, she saw James standing there, his face set with determination. Flanking him were 2 federal agents, their sharp eyes scanning everyone in the police station. Daniel and Mark stepped back, clearly uncomfortable with this sudden turn. "Release her immediately," James ordered in a commanding tone, without hesitation. Daniel hesitated, exchanging glances with Mark. They knew the game had changed, but instead of retreating, Mark tried to salvage the situation. "She was lawfully arrested. We found drugs in her car." James stepped closer and placed a file in front of them. "I suggest you take a good look at your fabricated evidence. We have a witness, and we have video that records everything. If you don't want this entire police precinct investigated, you'd better let her go right now." Lauren watched as Mark's face turned ashen. She had never expected everything to unravel so quickly. In that moment, she saw the fear in the eyes of those who had once prided themselves on being powerful. The handcuffs on her wrists were unfastened with a soft clack, a sound that rang out like a bell signaling the collapse of those who had abused their power for far too long. Lauren rubbed her wrist, feeling freedom slowly return. She turned to James, a surge of gratitude, emotion, and hope welling up inside her. She knew the battle was far from over. She also knew that Daniel and Mark wouldn't let things settle easily, but at least she now had a chance. And more importantly, she had James by her side, a brother who not only loved her, but was willing to fight for justice. Outside the police station, the air felt somehow fresher. As she stepped out, Lauren lifted her gaze to the night sky. The stars sparkled above the quiet heavens, yet deep within the city, a storm still simmered. She sighed and clenched her fist tightly. The real battle was only just beginning. Lauren sat in her hotel room, the faint glow from the desk lamp illuminating her tired face. Even though she had escaped the cramped cell, she still didn't feel truly free. A strange mix of lingering pain and simmering indignation welled up inside her. Everything had happened so fast. Just minutes ago, she was an ordinary teacher, devoted to her community. Now, she had become the center of a scandal that could shake the entire law enforcement system in Millstone. James entered, carrying a cup of hot coffee. He placed it on the table in front of her, his eyes scrutinizing every expression on his little sister's face. "Are you okay?" he asked, his deep voice full of worry. Lauren stared into the cup as wisps of steam rose, mirroring the tangled thoughts racing through her mind. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "I don't know," she admitted honestly. "Everything still feels so chaotic." James sat down opposite her, folding his arms with a determined look in his eyes. "They're not going to let you rest easy. Just because we have evidence doesn't mean the battle is over. In fact, it's only just beginning." Lauren looked up, her eyes reflecting a mix of fear and determination. She understood all too well. Daniel and Mark would surely not let her and James dig any deeper into this case without a fight. But more than that, she knew that if she backed down, many others would suffer the same injustice. "I don't want anyone else to go through this," she said softly but firmly. "Those who have been trapped by their schemes, those who have no one to protect them. I want to speak out for all of them." James smiled gently, a proud yet worried expression on his face. "Then you need to be ready for what's coming," he said as he placed a folder on the table. "We've got another witness." Lauren stared at the folder, her heart pounding even faster. "Who is it?" "Monica," James replied. "She's the one who recorded that video that day. But she's scared. She knows that if she comes forward, her life will never be the same." Lauren felt her heart tighten. She understood that fear all too well. She had experienced it herself. But knowing that someone had dared to stand up and record the truth sparked a glimmer of hope in her. "Can we protect her?" Lauren asked, her eyes lighting up with newfound resolve. James nodded. "That's why I need you to be strong. We're not gonna let them keep running amok." Lauren gripped her hands tightly. She knew this journey wouldn't be easy. She was aware that many dangers still lay ahead. But for the first time since her arrest, she felt she wasn't alone. There was James, Monica, and all those who still believed in justice. When Lauren stood up, she walked over to the window and looked out at the city at night. The streetlights stretched out in the darkness like small, resilient stars. A strange but powerful feeling surged within her, a belief that the truth would come to light, that justice would prevail. The fight was far from over, but this time she was ready. Lauren walked into the small meeting room at the FBI office in Atlanta, where the soft glow from the ceiling lights bathed a quiet yet tense space. She could feel the palpable nervousness in the air as James's concerned gaze swept over her. Her brother, once her rock, now faced one of his toughest challenges yet, protecting his little sister from a system that had grown rotten. At the far end of the table, Monica sat with her hands tightly clasped, her eyes avoiding direct contact, yet filled with resolve. Lauren felt a deep kinship with this young woman, a stranger whose courage would greatly impact their fight. "Thank you for coming," Lauren said softly, trying to offer comfort in the charged atmosphere. Monica swallowed hard, her eyes flickering briefly to James before returning to Lauren. "I can't stay silent anymore. I've seen everything. But I'm scared." Her words trailed off, and Lauren understood all that was left unsaid. She, too, had been overwhelmed by the fear of a force more powerful than herself. But now, she wasn't alone. "We will protect you," James said firmly, his voice steady and reassuring. "We have plans to put you into witness protection if needed, but more than that, if you speak up, you'll help expose the truth they're trying to hide." Monica paused, visibly wrestling with herself. Finally, she took a deep breath and nodded. "I'll do it." Lauren felt a sense of relief, but also a heavier burden of responsibility settle on her shoulders. She knew that from now on, the battle wasn't hers alone. James quickly turned his attention to the video Monica had recorded. He connected her phone to a laptop, and the footage began to play on the screen. Lauren's heart pounded as she watched the moment when Daniel and Mark arrested her. The images weren't perfect, but they clearly showed Mark stealthily stuffing a small bag of white powder into her purse. The scene sparked in her a surge of anger and regret. She remembered the panic of realizing she'd been set up, how every one of her explanations had been ruthlessly dismissed. James paused the video and looked directly at Lauren. "This is the most important evidence we have." Lauren couldn't take her eyes off the screen. In that moment, every emotion swirled within her: pain from betrayal, fury at the injustice, and a glimmer of hope that finally the truth would come to light. She turned to Monica, whose eyes still held a trace of worry, and smiled gently, a smile that was both for Monica and a promise to herself. "You did the right thing," Lauren said. "We're going to bring this truth to light, together." Outside the window, the Atlanta night stretched out with distant lights shimmering in the dark. But Lauren no longer felt engulfed by the shadows. For the first time in many days, she believed that dawn would come, and this time it would bring justice. Lauren sat in the courthouse waiting room, her hands clenched tightly as she listened to the murmurs from outside. Today was the decisive day, a day when the truth would finally be revealed. She took a deep breath, trying to steady the overwhelming pressure weighing on her shoulders. Sitting beside her, James placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, a silent reminder that she was not alone. Outside, reporters jostled for position as flashes from cameras lit up the scene non-stop. This case was no longer just her story. It had become a symbol in the fight against abuse of power. Banners proclaiming justice for Lauren had appeared everywhere, accompanied by shouts demanding transparency. The courtroom door opened, and a police officer signaled for Lauren. She swallowed hard, nodded to James, and rose to her feet. Each step she took down the long corridor dragged with memories of painful past moments. The night she was stopped, the humiliation of being handcuffed, the terror when she saw that small bag of white powder she had never even touched. But today, she was no longer the confused woman wrongfully accused. Inside the courtroom, the jury had taken their seats. Daniel and Mark sat opposite her, their faces set in stone. When their eyes met hers, Lauren felt no fear. Now, she held the advantage. The prosecutor began by presenting the evidence. Monica's video played on the large screen. The room fell silent as everyone watched the moment when Mark covertly stuffed the small bag into Lauren's purse. A wave of commotion surged through the courtroom. There was no doubt left. They had been caught red-handed. Lauren gripped her hands even tighter, feeling her heart pound in her chest. She glanced at Monica, the young woman who had bravely come forward despite knowing the risks. Monica's slight nod confirmed that they were fighting this battle together. When it was her turn, Lauren stepped up to the podium and looked straight at the jury. "I am not a criminal," she declared clearly and without hesitation. "I am a victim of abuse of power. I stand here today not only to reclaim my freedom, but to ensure that no one else endures what I have." Her words resonated throughout the room, touching everyone present. Justice was not just what she yearned for, it was what the entire community needed. Daniel and Mark could no longer maintain their composure. Under cross-examination, they stuttered, clinging desperately to their old lies. But everyone knew their game was over. The trial continued well into the afternoon, yet Lauren felt no exhaustion. When the judge held up the verdict, Lauren held her breath. "We find defendants Daniel and Mark guilty." The courtroom erupted. Some people burst into tears, while applause rang out ceaselessly. James squeezed her hand tightly, and Monica embraced her. In that moment, Lauren knew she had not only won for herself, but for all those who had suffered under oppression. As she stepped out of the courthouse, the sunset stained the sky with hues of red. Lauren looked upward, took a deep breath, and savored the taste of freedom she had fought so hard to reclaim. Outside, the crowd still waited. She stepped up to the podium and, with unwavering resolve, declared, "Justice does not come from silence. It comes from courage." This was not the end. It was the beginning of a new journey, a fight to ensure that what she had endured would never be repeated for anyone else. Lauren's story is not merely her personal quest for justice. It is a testament to the power of perseverance, courage, and belief in the truth. In a world where those in power can easily abuse it, silence can become complicit. But when even one person dares to stand up and fight, change can begin. Lauren refused to crumble under injustice. She transformed her pain into the drive to protect others. Her story reminds us that justice does not exist by default. It must be defended, demanded, and won through steadfast courage and determination. It also proves that even when we feel alone, if we stand for what is right, there will always be people ready to stand by our side. Every action, no matter how small, can make a difference, and a resolute voice can change an entire system. Thank you for watching. If you found this video interesting or enjoyable, please show your support by giving it a thumbs up. It really helps the channel grow and reach more amazing viewers like you. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss out on our future uploads. Your support means the world to us and keeps us motivated to create even better content for you.